Hare Krishna. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Vrishasya nashtam srinapadan tapasaucham dayamiti pratisandhata ashvasya mahimcha samavardhayat. Vrishasya nashtam srinapadan tapashaucham dayamiti pratisandhada ashvasya mahamcha samavardhayat. Translation or synonyms, sorry. Vrishasya, of the bull, the personality of religion. Nashtan, lost. Trin, three. Padan, legs. Tapa, austerity. Shaucham, cleanliness. Dayam, mercy. Iti, thus. Pratisandadhe, re-established. Ashvasya, by encouraging activities. Mahim, the earth. Cha, and Samavardhayat, perfectly improved. Translation. Thereafter, the king re-established the lost legs of the personality of religion, the bull, and by encouraging activities, he sufficiently improved the condition of earth. Purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. By designating particular places for the personality of Kali, Maharaj Parikshit practically cheated Kali. In the presence of Kali, Dharma in the shape of a bull, and the earth in the shape of a cow, he could actually estimate the general condition of his kingdom. And therefore, he at once took proper steps to re-establish the legs of the bull, namely austerity, cleanliness, and mercy. And for the general benefit of the people of the world, he saw that the gold stock might be employed for stabilization. Gold is certainly a generator of falsity, intoxication, prostitution, enmity, and violence, but under the guidance of a proper king or public leader or a brahmana or sannyasi, the same gold can be properly utilized to re-establish the lost legs of the bull, the personality of religion. Maharaj Parikshit, therefore, like his grandfather Arjuna, collected an all illicit gold kept for the propensities of Kali and employed it in the Sankirta Yajna, as per the instruction of Srimad Bhagavatam. As we have suggested before, one's accumulated wealth may be divided into three parts for distribution, namely 50% for the service of the Lord, 25% for the family members, and 25% for personal necessities. Spending 50% for the service of the Lord or for propagation of spiritual knowledge in society by way of Sankirta Yajna is the maximum display of human mercy. People of the world are generally in darkness regarding spiritual knowledge, especially in regard to the devotional service of the Lord. And therefore, to propagate the systematic transcendental knowledge of devotional service is the greatest mercy that one can show in this world. When everyone is taught to sacrifice 50% of his accumulated gold for the Lord's service, certainly austerity, cleanliness, and mercy automatically ensue. And thus, the lost three legs of the personality of religion are automatically established. When there is sufficient austerity, cleanliness, mercy, and truthfulness, naturally, Mother Earth is completely satisfied, and there is very little chance for Kali to infiltrate the structure of human society. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Gnananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Militam Yena Tasmai Sri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swa Pradantikam Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Devacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda, Sri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us on this weekend. The summer is coming to an end, and we are, going into the next cycle of the year. Fall is actually a beautiful time, but it is also an indicator. It's a leading indicator of things to come in terms of the cold. And I don't think I'm ready for the cold, although I'm having a cold right now, as you can tell. But but it's the cold that we were not looking forward to. The winter is what I'm referring to, the snow and, getting out there and cleaning up your driveway and all of the good things that happen with it. But in any case, today we are going to be discussing a continuation of the topics that we've been talking about for the last several weeks, in terms of the entry of Kali, the advent of Kaliyuga, and the effects of that. Today we will be reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 17, Text 42. So the king, Parikshit Maharaj, he's at the scene where Kali personified is beating Dharma, the bull. 3 of the legs of the bull are already broken, as we've been reading, right? And the 4th one is about to go. It's shaking, it's wobbling, it's on the verge of even giving up because it's bearing the weight of the bull and 3 legs are gone. And this signifies the advent of Kali. Now, in Satya Yuga, religious principles were governed by austerity, cleanliness, and mercy, and truthfulness, all 4. How, with Kali breaking 3 of the 4 legs of Dharma, only truthfulness is left, and that too, it's very weak and shaking. Mother Earth, that is represented by the cow, is also shaking in fear. Watching Kali beat up Dharma so badly, and the bull is bleeding so badly, the legs are broken, it's trying to stand on one leg. And so Mother Earth, that's personified, is watching all this and is shaking in fear. Now, we discussed this yesterday as well, as to, you may ask why truthfulness, is the only one that's left even in the present day Kali Yuga. I mean, it's hard to think of truthfulness in Kali Yuga. At least when I was reading this for the first time, I found it very hard to, say truthfulness, Kali Yuga, it's almost like an oxymoron, right? We don't see truthfulness practically in Kali Yuga, but there is still, if there's anything left, there is some truthfulness left. Why? Because truthfulness is the fundamental virtue of morality, and it is also the most enduring. Gopal Hari Prabhu discussed this in detail wonderfully yesterday, right? So that is why satsang is so very important. That is why satkatha is so very important, because these prevent us from sacrifice the truly real for the truly unreal. And that is actual morality, right? So what is truly real? Truly real is the all divine personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. Srimad Bhagavatam describes Krishna as Satyam Param, or the paramount truth, or the absolute truth. And what is truly unreal? Truly unreal is our false ego. So every time we give in to the desires of our false ego, we are actually not serving. We're not serving Krishna, and we're actually becoming a victim of Maya, because Maya is using us. Maya is actually using us. We think that we are ahead and we are trying to, create a better situation for ourselves. But no, we're actually playing into the hands of Maya. That's the stupidity, the foolishness, the ignorance that we are so conditioned to over millions of lifetimes, right? So instead of serving the Paradharma, which is the ultimate, right? It's the topmost religion, which is serving Krishna. We're serving ourselves, right? Savai pumsa paradharma, right? Yato bhakti radhokshaja. And how are we supposed to serve Krishna, the highest religion, right? The ultimate. How are we supposed to do it? Ahaituki apratihata, that is really unconditionally. We're supposed to do it constantly. But we're not serving Krishna. We're just, instead, we in fact, we don't have, I can speak for myself, the taste itself is missing, right? Because we're so badly conditioned, lifetime after lifetime after lifetime. We're so engaged in playing into Maya's hands. And it's only getting worse, right? And we'll talk a little more about that as we get through this lecture, right? Like I said, this is a continuation of what we've been discussing over the last week or two. And we're just going to be expounding, a little more, peeling more and more the layers. And it's meant to be more a reinforcement for all of us, right? So it's not earth-shattering. I'm not going to be, talking about things that you haven't heard already or you're not aware of. But it is meant for us to reinforce through repetition, through reiterating what's been said by our acharyas, by what Srimad Bhagavatam has been telling us, and how we can actually improve. Because we lack the motivation, we lack the taste, we lack the discipline to really get out of this. I'll give you an example. Just yesterday, there was a fly that managed to get into the house and was getting all over me, and getting in my way in the kitchen as I was trying to make some bhoga. And I was trying everything to, get it off of my face, get it off of, getting it out of the house itself. So I would somehow, try to get it to the door, the door to the patio, and slide the door open so that the fly would go out. But the silly fly would come all the way with me to the door, to the opening, and then would refuse to go out. So I tried shooing it. I tried, taking a book and tried to, push it out, but it kept coming back in, no matter what I did. So I was just thinking to myself, oh my gosh, this is so much like me. My spiritual master is trying his very best to get me out of this, horrible material situation. And here I am. I'm saying, no, Maharaj, Guru Maharaj, I want to just stay here. I want to stay here. I'm enjoying myself. I'm really enjoying myself. So, that is so funny because Krishna has his ways of teaching us in so many different ways. If we only take a moment to think, even during our day-to-day life, right? Even in the day, there are so many lessons that we are given by Krishna. He is so merciful. He is so compassionate. We may not be able to see him because we don't have the eyes to be able to see him, but that engagement is there, that guidance is there, and the compassion coming down from Krishna, his mercy is limitless. But unfortunately, we don't have the taste, we don't have the vision to be able to see it, and we don't use our intelligence. Our intelligence in Kaliyuga, which is also one of the effects, is that our intelligence is so dull that we don't recognize, the mercy that is actually coming down to us through our spiritual master. So we are like the camels, the camel that's chewing on a bunch of thorns. It's chewing on a bunch of thorns. The gums are bleeding, the mouth is bleeding, it's tasting its own blood. And it's thinking, oh, wow, I like the salty taste of whatever is coming. It's not recognizing that it's actually hurting itself, and it's actually tasting its own blood. Well, like that. It is an extreme situation. It is a very dire situation. It's a very grave situation that we're in, actually. But we tend to just push it under the rug, and we want to move on with life. We know that, the Srimad Bhagavatam is teaching us that, saying that, hey, you stupid, this is Kaliyuga. Wake up. Bhaktivinoda Thakur also tells us, right? Wake up. Jeev Jago. We're not in that position to even wake up. And even if we wake up, it's very, very, very lackadaisical, right? There's no real discipline to really enforce it every moment, every hour, every day, of our lives, at least what's remaining of it. Past is the past. There's nothing we can do about that. So, Srila Prabhupada has given us 4 regulative principles. And again, these are not random principles that Srila Prabhupada just pulled from the thin air, right? These are prohibitions. And what are these prohibitions? Meat eating, gambling, illicit sex, and intoxication. Now, these 4 prohibitions, as we're discussing over the last several days, are the ones that are actually breaking the legs of morality. So let's try to understand the 4 legs of morality a little more closely. All right. So tapa is the first one, right? What is tapa? Tapa can be described as, this also means to be simple, to be austere, to be a minimalist, right? Having very, very few things, and to be self-sacrificing. Shaucham. What is shaucham? Shaucham means to be pure. Purity means not just purity of the physical self, but also internally and emotionally. So mentally and emotionally as well, we need to be free from contamination. Daya. Daya is being kind, being compassionate, being merciful, being forgiving. There are so many synonyms. And being generous, right? And then the 4th one is satyam, which we're talking about, right? This means to be truthful. It means to be real and not concerned with the irrelevant and meaningless gossips and diversions and distractions that we have, right? And it means not to be deceitful, not to be duplicitous in our dealings, not only with others, but dealings with ourselves, right? So that self-honesty, that self-introspection is very, very important. And our dealings with Krishna, ultimately, right? We should be able to stand up to Krishna naked, admit what we don't have, admit the things that we're doing wrong, rather than covering it up and saying, I was tired, so I did it. Or I'm under a lot of stress, or I'm going through this situation, so I had to, give myself some leeway, But that self-introspection, that self-honesty is so, so very important for each and every one. We should check and hold the standard in front of us, the benchmark in terms of being honest. And there are so many examples for honesty. And we'll talk a little more about it. So we don't do a good job. Definitely we don't do, especially with the advent of Kaliyuga. It's only getting worse and worse and worse. It's becoming harder and harder and harder for us to uphold these values on a daily basis. So take tapa, for instance, right? It means to be simple. It means to be a minimalist. But we're so driven in the world today that we are driven to do anything but be a minimalist, right? There's always something coming and grabbing our mind share, right? Whether it is a new book or it is, a new place to see or a new thing to acquire, right? Now, what do you think about, the product companies? They're constantly trying to better the previous model or the existing model, right? So much so, we're constantly engaged, we're constantly caught up in that cycle, getting a newer model of the car or getting a newer model of our phones. Guess what? People are, in line for the iPhone 13, right? So These are games that the product companies are constantly playing, and there's a whole science behind it. There's a whole marketing campaign behind all these things. There's this all under the garb of, hey, we're making life better. We're using technology to make your life so much better. You can do so many more things. But it's actually leading to more and more accumulation, right? And as a result of that accumulation, we are also having to work harder and harder. If you've realized, our work is not getting any easier, it's only getting harder. My father was in the Indian Army. He was a colonel in the Army. And even as I was growing up, I remember he would, when the war is on, obviously, the defense folks, the armed forces are out there on the front line, protecting the country, protecting the citizens of the country. They're doing everything. I mean, it's a very, very difficult life. I agree. But between the wars is nothing but peacetime, right? So during the peacetime, they're training, they're preparing. But for the most part, it is a very relaxed life. I remember my father would come home for lunch from his office. He would have his lunch. He would have his half hour or 1 hour siesta in the afternoon, and then go back to work, and then be back, in a reasonable amount of time. By 4:30, 5 o'clock or so, he would be back, spend time with us. I can't imagine now, these days, especially, working from home hasn't made it any easier, and even otherwise. The last 32 years that I've been in the workforce, I've only seen, my wife and I, both of us are spending hours and hours and hours and hours at work, doing all of this busy work, doing all of this hard work for what? When we look back, now we're at a stage where we're thinking, what were we doing? Bringing up the children, yes, is important, very, very important. And, we feel reasonably happy that, we did a pretty decent job. Thanks to Krishna, thanks to the congregation, thanks to the community that helped us bring our children up. Now they're settled, they have their own children. So they have a good, solid foundation in Krishna consciousness, which is the best thing that can happen to our children and to us. Now, apart from that, when we look back, there are so many things that we could have done differently, right? Leading a much simpler life. I'll tell you, for instance, when my wife and I got married, we came to the US for our masters. So just after we got married, we came here to the US to get our masters. The idea was I would get my PhD and we would go back to India. That was the plan, nothing more. And so we rented an apartment. It was a 1-bedroom apartment. And we basically mustered whatever assistantship money we had to pay for the rent. Believe it or not, there was nothing. It was bare bone. It was not a furnished apartment by any means. We didn't have anything in the apartment. And at that time, the microwaves were still new. They'd just come out. And so we spent, I think it was $200 or something like that way on a microwave. That was a lot of money at that time. And for some strange reason, we thought, okay, we just pop stuff into the microwave and out came, a finished dish, because that's how the marketing pictures showed all of those things. And we didn't think any better, right? We didn't even ask. So all we had in that 1-bedroom apartment, rental apartment, was nothing but a microwave. That's it. All right. So we started from there, and then came the kids in time, and with the kids came more things to take care of them, and a few more things and a few more things, and before you knew it, the apartment was too small. So we had to think of, hey, we need to get some space for the children, because they need to, they can't be crawling around where everything, they're running and bumping into stuff. So we said, okay, we need to get a house, the great American dream, right? Having a home of your own. So we embarked on that, and we didn't settle for anything less. Being overachievers, as most of us are coming from India, we're all, we got to be the best. We got to be on the top. We got to, so that kind of mindset. And we ended up buying a very simple but functional home. My father, also being an architect, he had me working on building some of our homes back in India. And so that stuck with me, and my wife and I decided, no, let's build our own home. So we built our home, and it turned out to be a 3,300 square foot home on a 1 acre lot. I mean, we're in the middle of nowhere. So yeah, it was kind of affordable. We were in the middle of cornfields in the Midwest. But guess what? This 3,300 square foot home was practically, it disappeared in this 1 acre lot. So while this house was big, all the furniture from the apartment practically disappeared in that house. So we had to fill it up with more furniture to make it look presentable when guests came, or when friends would come. And guess what? With this 1 acre lot, now someone has to maintain it, right? And we didn't have, sprinkler systems were not popular at that point in time. There was not so much mechanization as well. So yours truly would go, with the basic tools, and it would take all my time after work, every day, every evening. It was ridiculous. So I'm saying, we get caught up in this cycle to a point that it never gets better, right? It's only getting worse. It's only getting worse. It's only when you get to a point when you turn around and look back and you say, oh my God, I was this foolish, and I could have done it a lot differently. That's when you realize, Maya really, really takes in these suckers like us, right? I can speak for myself. I can tell you, I could have done so many things very differently and avoided the mistakes that I made in my life. But that realization, never comes to us, or never came to me, because I never stopped to think. That was my problem, right? I never stopped to think and reflect in an honest way, is this the right thing? Am I doing the right thing? And I refuse to take guidance either. So that's my stubbornness, right? So we are so bullheaded in a sense that, we're not willing to even take that guidance. So not only atyahara, right? As Rupa Goswami says, atyahara prayasascha, these are all which actually negate the efforts to develop true bhakti for Krishna, the taste for Krishna. So along with atyahara comes prayasas. Prayas is what, basically you're putting in all this, you're over-endeavoring. We are all over-endeavoring to maintain what we have. And it doesn't stop there. We want to acquire even more, right? How many of us grew up with a car at home back in India, right? And now one car is not enough. You got to have two cars, one for the wife, one for yourself. Now even two cars is not enough. You want to have three cars. One car for the driver to take the children to the school. So people are constantly accumulating. I'm talking about life in India, and here too. We all have 2-car, 3-car garages, and of course here it does become a necessity because both husband and wife are working. And why they're working? Because they're trying to sustain, they're trying to maintain, they're trying to put food on the table. But if we had taken to a much simpler life, we wouldn't have had some of these challenges, right? So that's the takeaway from this. Take Shaucham, which is the other code of morality, right? It means to be pure, right? And always. So being clean physically and in the mind. The first thing that comes to my mind is, hey, COVID is the new norm, right? And it has changed so many things. It has changed so many things, including, I find people coming and sitting in their pajamas for a meeting, right? Now, if they're sitting in their pajamas, it's also telling me that they're probably, they haven't had their showers yet. So we get into a conference call, we shut the video off, and we're at work. All we're trying to, we're doing is we're logging into our computers. Never mind that someone hasn't visited the shower in 2 weeks. Now, not just physically, but even mentally, we're equally dirty because we're spending so much time in front of the computers. And if it's not our computers, it is the idiot box, right? Everything is over the air. So we get tired at work and you want to tune into a channel at TV. It's not one channel or two channels. You have hundreds of channels. And as though that is not enough, then you have pay-per-view, you have the Netflixes, and you have the Primes, and there's so much content that is available there, and easy access, very easy access. You don't even have to move your backside, right? You just sit on your couch and you hit that button. Oh, now you don't even have to hit the button. You just speak into your remote, and it's done. It already recognizes what kinds of genres you like. There's artificial intelligence working in the background, and it'll pop up the right channel for you. And please, you say, hey, you know what? Maybe you like this. Maybe this channel is of interest to you. Maybe this content is of interest to you. So it is prompting us, and that's nothing but Maya, right? So everything is online, from pin to plane and more. I mean, you just have to log into Amazon and you can practically get everything. You can get your food, you can get your light bulbs, you can get everything from pin to plane. So it becomes so much easier for us to indulge in these kinds of activities that the true nature of the soul is completely ignored, completely. So not only atyahara, but also the fundamental motivation to stay pure in the mind becomes lost, right? And once it is lost, you're not even thinking twice. Daya. It's not at work, it's not in governments, it's not even in homes or on the dining table. I mean, just think about it. Like I said, when we are so absorbed in ourselves and in indulging in ourselves, we are not thinking considerately about other living entities, right? When it becomes so easy for us to push that button and have an Uber Eats, or have one of those online services make food come straight to our doorstep, we're not thinking twice. The thousands and millions of people around the world are now, with all these easy ways to do things and get food without having to even worry about what's going into the food. Is it being made with the right consciousness? Is it being offered? Hey, they're not even thinking that far. Leave alone all of that, they're having, the meat eating has become even more prevalent. How do we satisfy our senses even more? Is there more masala in this? Is there a different variation of this? Oh, I'm not getting chettinad, but I'm getting Goan, I'm getting Szechuan, I'm getting this, I'm getting that, I'm getting different flavors and tastes of the same. So we're not thinking clearly. Our minds are getting dulled by the day, and Maya is playing us like crazy, and we don't even recognize that, but until it is too late. Satyam. So there's not a moment when the mind is not finding ways to cheat. As a result, we just are talking about it, right? There's no taste. We're finding ways to make excuses and rationalize why we're doing what we're doing. We're trying to find ways to say, I'm justified. I'm very tired. I'm very, very tired. I need to have something different. So I'm watching this particular channel on TV, or I'm eating that food. It's all happening because I'm able to very quickly justify. Why? Because I'm already doing prayers. I'm already endeavoring. So I'm getting tired. And because I'm getting tired, I'm using that as an excuse rather than addressing the root cause. I'm very quick and I'm very intelligent at doing that, unfortunately. Right? So we use reasons, we come up with reasons to be deceitful in the bargain, right? At the end of the day, if you look at it, we are being deceitful, right? Instead of being honest and saying, no, this is not right for me. This is not aligned with Krishna. This is not pleasing Krishna. I'm pleasing myself, but I'm not willing to accept that. I think we need to stop, hit that pause button, hit that stop button instead of hitting the easy button, right? Most of us have seen that big red button that says easy on it. Staples started that. So we should get away from hitting that easy button. Devotional life is not easy, but it can be easy for the simple-minded. That's what Prabhupada would say. We are not simple-minded. We're very deceitful by nature, right? The things that we've been conditioned to and we've been doing, we've been watching others, it's become a part of us now over millions of lifetimes. So being deceitful is negating truthfulness in us, right? So we're always finding ways to cheat ourselves. So one of the examples that we can think of is when this sect of Brahmins who were very jealous of Haridas Thakur, they wanted to see him fall. So they actually sent a prostitute to him when he was, living in a small, humble kutir where he was doing his, performing his devotional services and chanting all the rounds that he did. So Chaya Devi appeared on the scene. She wanted to distract him. And the moment she distracted him, the plot was, see, we've got Haridas Thakur, he's associating with a prostitute. And so he's just, a showman, right? All these devotional activities, all this chanting that he's doing is just nothing but a show, a pure show. But that's not what happened, right? She waited the whole day, and what did Haridas Thakur say? I have to finish my chanting and then I will attend to you. So day one went by. She waited. She came back the next day and, tried to beautify herself even more. But that didn't seem to bother or affect Haridas Thakur at all. He said, "Oh, I've started my day's chanting. Please bear with me." And he was being respectful to her. He said, "Please be seated." And he continued his chanting. And by the time he finished all his devotional, activities, he finished all his rounds of chanting, the day was over. And so she came back the third day. Same thing happened on day 3 as well. And by the end of the third day, she was so taken aback, and not just taken aback, but she was actually attracted to the holy name. That's the beauty of being in association with something that is pure, because then that rubs off onto us. So the association is very, very, very important. And we'll talk about that. But in this case, Haridas Thakur was true to the Lord. I mean, he was truthful in his commitment to the Lord. He could have very easily have given up or given in, if not day 1, day 2, and if not day 2, day 3, not knowing how many more days she was going to be coming back, right? And they were all in isolation. It's not like there were people around or anything. He could have very easily said, no one's looking at me. I can do what I want to do. But no, he was true to himself. He was true to his commitment to the Lord. So in the previous verses, Maharaj Parikshit also identifies the 4 aspects of immorality which break the legs of morality. And Gopal Hari Prabhu touched on it yesterday as well in his class. So I just want to get, a little more into that. We're peeling off small layers of onions here in this case. It's a bad example. I shouldn't be talking about onions, but figuratively speaking. So smaya is the first one, right? Smaya means arrogance or conceit. And then there is sangha. So there is smaya, then there is sangha or illicit association, right? And then we have mada. Mada is, it means excitement, it means passion, lust, intoxication. And then you have anartha. Anartha is basically falsehood. It's lying, cheating, right? All the things that we're talking about. So smaya or arrogance breaks the leg of daya or compassion or mercy, right? Now, compassion, as we spoke, means to feel empathy for the needs and wants of others. But when we are self-absorbed, I just want to make sure I do a quick time check. Yeah, so we still have about 18 minutes. So when we are self-absorbed and self-important, we tend to overlook the needs of others, right? We will even go, I mean, the extent of killing them. When I say we, I'm talking about some extreme, right? If it suits our whims, we're even willing to go and kill. And in this case, I'm referring to living entities, right? So living entities that we would want to kill. For instance, people are constantly putting meat on their tables. And how does that happen? By killing innocent animals, right? We're not worried about the calf that's losing its mother cow. We're not worried about, all of the fish or, the other things that we put on the table. And so callously indulging in it with so much passion, with so much lust. This tastes so good. This is serving my taste buds, and we're actually reveling in those kinds of activities, that shows, I mean, it's so pitiful. And having come from the other side, I look back and my wife and I are like, did we really do that? I mean, how could we, right? How could we? And we continue to see that in life today, everywhere, right? So not just animals, we should regard every living entity with care and compassion. I mean, that has to be fundamental. Otherwise, no matter how advanced we are as a culture, how advanced we are as human beings, right? How advanced we are in our spiritual quantum, we are not being compassionate, and we're bound to fall eventually, right? Finally, it's all going to come back to us. Being vegetarian is good. You will find there is a small percentage of people that do believe in vegetarianism, which is good. But just being a vegetarian alone without being sensitive to the needs of other living entities is another form of arrogance, right? So we should be compassionate in all ways, not just in our diet. So when we say that, hey, no meat eating we have to understand that there is more to it. It's not just at face value, no meat eating, being a vegetarian, therefore I'm good. No, it is good to only up to a certain point, but beyond that, we have to try and understand what does that really mean. It means that we should be compassionate to all living entities. And the Lord gives us so many examples. I mean, throughout Srimad Bhagavatam, we see even the Lord has set such beautiful examples himself, even in, during his pastimes in this material world, right? He is all compassionate, but even when he comes here, makes his appearance in the material world, he is so compassionate. So you take the example of Lord Narasimha, for instance. I mean, Krishna in that form was so compassionate, not only to Prahlad. Prahlad was undergoing the worst possible tyranny from his very own father, right? We all have heard this time and time and time again. The worst of the worst, being thrown into, pots of boiling oil, into a pit of snakes, being trampled by mad elephants, being pushed off of a cliff with a rock tied to his feet so that he would drown in the ocean. There are so many times and so many different atrocities that were committed. But he was completely fixed. He was in Krishneka Sharana. He was just completely surrendered to the Lord. And the Lord, what did he do? The Lord didn't say, okay, this is just another living entity. No, but he said, he completely he demonstrated his compassion by taking care of Prahlad in every possible way. But what I'm getting to is that the Lord in Narasimha's form was not only compassionate to Prahlad, but he was compassionate to all the others as well. You take Hiranyakashipu. He was, I mean, you would think how, I mean, he literally pulled apart, his entails from his body and put it around his neck. One may ask, how did the Lord exhibit compassion there? But think about it. He took care of Hiranyakashipu so that he would have a better life, right? Back in the spiritual world. That's where he came from. Thanks to the Kumaras, Jaya and Vijaya were cursed. And so they had to go through 3 births as demons, in this material world. So the Lord came personally to recover his, devotees, Jaya and Vijaya in this case, Hiranyaksha and Hiranyakashipu, right? So, and then not just Hiranyakashipu, but also Lord Brahma. Lord Brahma had given Hiranyakashipu all this, the boons, the benediction that he, because Hiranyakashipu did not want to be killed by at any cost. But since Brahma could not award life, rather protection of life or immortality, he asked, so basically the arrangement was that Hiranyakashipu would not be killed inside or outside, not during daylight or during the nighttime, not by a man or a beast, so all the various things, not this, not that, not this, not that. Basically, if you equate it down at the bottom, you'll say, it basically doesn't, he's practically not going to be, be able to be destroyed. But even to keep Lord, and Brahma went ahead and said, Tathastu, right? To keep Brahma's word clean and clear as well, the Lord was so compassionate that he took care of even that. So he protected even Lord Brahma's word by doing just that. He killed Hiranyakashipu on the threshold. It wasn't during daylight or night, right? It was during dusk. So he took care of, he made his own devotees' word good. And we hear so many different examples, right? There are numerous examples without getting into more details, right? Dhruva Maharaj, Bali Maharaj, Vritrasura, even the Asuras. Why? For that matter, even Putana, right? Putana came with the intent of killing little baby Krishna under the context, under the pretext of, nursing the baby with, but we all know that she had poisoned her breasts, right? But even her, because she had the slightest of the inclination of coming in as a mother nursing the child, Krishna is so compassionate that he gave her a special place. And after killing her, she was awarded a special place in Goloka as an assistant to his mother in her kitchen, right? Because she had that maternal instinct or maternal affection that even if it was the slightest of the slight that she exhibited. So we see how Krishna has been extremely compassionate. Kaliya is another one that comes to our mind, right? Where he was such a poisonous snake and he was just making the whole river, dead with all the poison that he exuded. And what did Krishna do? Krishna very nicely, painful to Kaliya, of course, but he danced and danced and danced on all of the heads of Kaliya and finally got his arrogance out of his system to teach him a lesson to a point that Kaliya fully surrendered to Krishna. Okay. Sangha. Sangha is illicit association, right? So what does Sangha do? Sangha breaks the leg of Saucham or cleanliness. So like we discussed earlier today, Saucham is cleanliness, not just physically, but also mentally and emotionally as well. So by the unwanted association of the opposite sex, we are not only degrading ourselves to the worst modes of material nature, like animals, right? No different. We're degrading ourselves to the worst codes of morality. When we hear about the Bill Cosbys, we hear about the Bill Clintons of the world, that no matter how great they are in terms of their position, they've fallen to the worst depths of morality. The example that we hear quite often is Bilva Mangala Thakur. Bilva Mangala Thakur was so overcome by his sexual desires that in spite of being a well-respected man in society, he couldn't stay away from the prostitute. So much so that even during a terrible storm, he crossed I believe it was the Yamuna River, to get to the other side. And on the way, he, one night when the storm was on and his urges were, really, really making him go crazy, he actually decided to go visit the prostitute that lived on the other side of the river. So he had to cross the river to get there. And because of the storm, the river was flooding and it was moving at such pace. But even that, he risked his life, jumped into the river, started to swim, found that it was very difficult to even keep up with the current, took the help of a dead body, thinking it was a wooden log, dead body that was floating. Took the help of a dead body, thinking it was a wooden log, managed to cross the other side to get to the other side of the river. And then he gets to the house of the prostitute and banging on the doors, and she's not opening the door. So then what does he do? He tries to scale the walls of the prostitute. The wall is high and he's not able to do that. He finds something that looks like a rope, and it actually is a snake. He's holding on to the snake, and he scales the wall of the prostitute and finally makes it into the prostitute's home. And guess what? I mean, this shows how desperate a person can get. Desperate, right? Even to a point of putting our own lives at risk, putting our families at risk, making the worst possible mistakes in our life, things that cannot be undone. The consequences are severe, very, very severe. I mean, we don't recognize how serious this is. And the whole thing about thinking, feeling, willing, and acting is very true, right? As we contemplate on some of these nasty things, which are, time wasters, number one, but also, degrade our consciousness, we're not in the right association. And that's what we're talking about, right? Not having the satsanga. The illicit association is only going to pull us in the wrong direction. Before you know it, you're sliding away. Sliding away, it's a downhill slope. You can get the best of it. It gets the worst of you. And you end up falling into that mud, and it's like a sinking sand pit. You cannot get out of it. It's too late, right? So therefore, it's very, very important for us to recognize and try to keep our minds clean, be in a mode of, in the sattvic mode as much as possible, so that our thinking is at least inclined towards something that is better in a moral goodness. And the best would be to be thinking about and contemplating on Krishna and the wonderful pastimes. Right? It's just so relieving. That's why reading the Srimad Bhagavatam, getting the association of the Bhagavata is so very important. Every day, reading that one verse or two verses, or reading in association, even better. Right? And some of us don't have that luxury, but still keeping in touch with the Bhagavatam and really allowing the Bhagavatam into your mind, into your heart, into your body, into your soul. It's such an uplifting experience. And look at this Bill of Mangla. I mean, just it keeps coming back to me. So even after the prostitute tells him, "Hey, instead of spending the time you're spending with me, if you could spend even a fraction of that time thinking or meditating upon Krishna, you would be so much better." And sends Bill of Mangla away towards Vrindavan. And on the way, he goes with the intent of, doing, taking the advice of that prostitute. In this case, it was a very, very extreme and unusual. You don't have prostitutes telling you to go and focus on Krishna, right? For all the obvious reasons. But here, Bilva Mangla is told that by the prostitute, and he is on his way to Vrindavan, and he stops on the way at his friend's place, I believe, not fully aware of the details, but he's now attracted to the hostess, the wife of the host. Can you imagine? And tradition used to be that whatever the atithi or the guest asked for, the host as a part of the hospitality, would give. And so the host actually requests his wife to make herself available to Bilva Mangala Thakur for that night. And the scene unfolds, and the wife arrives in his room, and Bilva Mangala Thakur realizes at that point, thank goodness, he recognizes what a horrible man, to what depths he's really fallen to. And so he requests her for her hairpins, I believe, and pokes his eyes and says, it's because of these eyes, because of the vision that I have, that I'm constantly lusting for, these kinds of things. I'm full of lust. And then he makes his way to Vrindavan. Long story short, we all know he goes to Vrindavan and he's singing the glories of Krishna, and he is so absorbed in Krishna that Krishna himself comes and dances, to his glories. And so Bilva Mangala Thakur is, again, out of the limitless, infinite mercy that Krishna has and exudes, and extends to everybody. Bilva Mangala Thakur is also a very fortunate recipient of that. Okay. So on the one hand, sexual restraint itself does not make us pure. Okay, let's be clear about that. But we must also be emotionally, we should be free from, all of these emotionally intimate relationships with anyone other than our own spouse. And even that has to be done in regulation, with regulation. Because these regulations keep us clean from mental, emotional, and even physical disease, right? So we have to be very, very, very careful about following the regulations to the T, to be as careful as possible. Okay, so intoxication. Let's talk a little bit about Mada, right? Mada breaks the leg of Tapa. Tapa is austerity, right? It's or simplicity, being content with what you have. Being simple-minded means that we also don't have to over-engineer our lives, like we were talking about earlier. So putting food on the table and putting food on the table are two different things. We see some of the rich and the famous, they are getting caviar from, some place in, off the coast of the Ivory Coast or whatever, or, they're getting it from, getting exotic wines from here. They're getting specialty fish from some other place around the world. People can afford to get all of these things, and they're using their money in the wrong possible ways. I'm just taking extreme examples, but we can apply it even in our day-to-day lives. In fact, I have a colleague who prides himself in having a walk-in wine cooler in his house. It's he's got hundreds of expensive wines from around the world that he keeps in a temperature-controlled wine cooler or a cellar in his own house. And these are like each wine bottle is about $1,000 to $5,000 each. And so he feels very happy about letting people know, man, I've got this wine from here, I've got that wine from there. So in one sense, if you look at it, it is intoxication, right? So you're talking about Mada. Mada is intoxication. But it is also intoxication, in this case, surrounded around alcohol. Now, why do people drink alcohol, right? To get a high, to be able to escape from some of the realities of life. But instead, people take the right shelter instead of, resorting to the false shelter of intoxication through alcohol. Instead, taking shelter of the Lord, the real shelter, the true shelter of taking shelter, by surrendering to the Lord. The Lord is taking care of us. Krishna is taking care of everything that we need. So we don't need to really tension nahi lene ka, right? Krishna is there to take care of it. But instead, we have Maya throwing us, rolling us, tossing us, and even smothering us with everything, right? Into delusion every minute. So there was a time, if you remember, some of us can recall, right, when we would take a photograph, what would happen? It would be sent to, the roll from the camera would be sent to the photo lab. The photo lab would process it, and send back the glossy pictures, right? Or you would go into the store and get your glossy pictures back. And you could only get so many. You would get 12, 24, 36 at a time. And those were times when we actually were very, very conservative in terms of checking to see, did I get the right shot? Because you don't have so much film, and films were expensive, and the processing is expensive, and then you have to make copies of those to send to 10 different people, your family, friends. So you're in the back of your mind, you're thinking, oh, okay, I'm not going to take a picture only if I absolutely need to take the picture. Leave that. We're talking about, when I was a little kid, about 5, 6 years old, the camera rolls were actually sent off to Germany because we didn't have photo processing labs in India at that time. My father would send the roll for the color film to go to Germany, and it would take roughly 2 to 3 months before it actually came back. By then, the event is almost forgotten as to why you took a picture at that time. But you can imagine. So the cost was exorbitant, right? It was crazy. The cost then came down. Hey, so people were very, very, very careful with the things because the resources were so difficult at that point in time. But with time, now what do? We have phones that can take hundreds of pictures in no time, in a few minutes. And we don't even think twice as to why we're taking these pictures. Does it make sense or not? Oh, the eye was a little closed, or maybe the person was looking a little that way. Maybe the strand of hair wasn't really good, so maybe I need to take 10 other pictures so that I get it right. And now you have a shutter speed that goes so fast that you just had to click it once and it'll take 100 pictures at a time, somewhere along those lines. Right? So we're not thinking, and therefore we're getting intoxicated in a sense with all the things that are coming to us. And as my one of my college friends jokes with me, and he says, we're drinking the Maya, which is true. We're drinking the Maya because we're getting intoxicated with all of these things. So it doesn't just have to be alcohol, right? It can be anything that we have access to, whether it is TV channels or it is a smartphone or whatever, right? And finally, we have anartha. Anartha is deceit. Anartha is deceit. Excuse me. And anartha breaks the leg of truthfulness or satyam. Believe it or not, truthfulness is still the last one left standing. It is the strongest leg and the most enduring as a result. Now, we may think gambling refers to taking a trip to Las Vegas or Atlantic City, right? Or even here in Aurora for that matter, and indulging in the casinos. Some people even think, oh, that may be too extreme. I'm just playing cards. I'm just playing Teen Patta, for instance, right? With money, of course. But if I'm playing cards and I'm not using money, I'm not gambling. But that is still a form of gambling. Now, again, the point here is playing cards itself is not a crime. But think of the reasoning behind it. Right? The reasoning behind is being, whether you're playing bluff or you're playing Teen Patta, you're trying to cheat the other person. Whoever is a better cheater, unfortunately, is the winner. So therefore, we should be mindful about that. And we should think about not risking what is real for the sake of what is unreal. And like I said early on, what is real is Satyam Param. Who is that? It's Krishna himself, right? So we have to make sure, we have to question ourselves. Are we doing the right thing? Are we being true to Krishna, right? Or if we're not being true to Krishna, then obviously we are being deceitful. There's only this way or that way. It's binary. There's nothing in between. So the principles of morality are the 4 legs that hold up the bull of dharma. Now, what is the bull itself? What is the ultimate purpose of dharma? Ultimate, like we said, it is the divine love for the all-attractive, for Krishna. Now, without divine love, all behavior, moral or not, is nothing but being pretentious, right? And it is ugly. So when one is absorbed absorbed in cultivating the divine love through Krishna Sangha or Krishna Katha, the four principles of morality are automatically protected, preserved, and they become firm and strong. So here, it's like what's referred to in the verse, where Parikshit Maharaj, through proper activities, through encouraging activities, right, is basically restoring and re-establishing the other three lost legs of religion, right? And now the bull is able to stand nice and solid. The same thing applies to us in our lives. By keeping truthfulness, because that's the only one that's left standing, using truthfulness, being true to ourselves, that self-honesty, that self-introspection I was talking about, to ensure that we are actually serving the Lord and staying true to our purpose in life, our commitment to be a part of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mission, to serve the Lord with love in everything that we do. It doesn't have to be, money. It doesn't have to be, even if it is time that we're spending, right? The Nama Yagya that we're doing, the sacrifice that we are performing by offering our time in itself is the best possible sacrifice, right? And what to speak of being able to do that in the satsanga and in the association, it becomes so much more, the benefits are exponential. So by doing that, we can actually restore all the other ones too, like austerity, like cleanliness, like mercy. Those also become firmly established. And when that happens, life in itself is transformed and it becomes so much more improved. It's completely reestablished, completely restored, as Parikshit Maharaj has restored, the four legs of the bull. So every time our cleanliness, our austerity, our compassion, and our truthfulness are compromised, thanks to Maya, we need to understand that it is actually taking us away from Krishna. Okay, so when we're taken away from the light of Krishna, we are immediately, split second, actually there is no gap. The next very moment, we are immediately thrown into the darkness of ignorance. So we need to keep that in mind. So that's an important takeaway from this, is that, the consequences are very, very, very heavy, very severe. And unless we realize what we're receiving, right, what we're getting through our spiritual master, it is not ordinary. Not everybody, Joshmo is not, it's not just that the Joshmo is getting that mercy, but he or she is not recognizing the mercy that is being extended by Krishna. But it is through our spiritual master that light is actually being shown. That means when it's actually helping us recognize. We don't, like Prabhupada says, the sun is out there, but we wouldn't be able to see the sun if we couldn't see, the sun rays, if the sun rays are not shining down on this earth, right? So similarly, Krishna is giving us everything, in terms of his compassion, his mercy that he's extending to us. And unless we take, and that we cannot see by ourselves, right? We are fortunate and we are in this situation because most of us have taken to the path where we are being guided by a spiritual master. And therefore, having a spiritual master in our lives, this mercy coming from Krishna doesn't happen by default. It's not a given. So we should consider ourselves extremely fortunate. And having been given that opportunity, we should make the most of it. Then Krishna is pleased. And when Krishna is pleased, life is successful. That is true success. Okay, I'd like to end here and see if there are any questions or comments. I know I've gone about 11 minutes over. My apologies. I'm a little under the weather here. The brain isn't working too well. It's kind of frozen and I feel like my head is in the clouds right now with the cold. But let me take a moment and see if there are any questions from any of you.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Yes, Prabhu.
Sorry, I want to keep that. Thank you very much for a wonderful class, Prabhu. I was just thinking about this message of Atyahara and over endeavoring.
Yeah.
I was, I'm thinking about, because sometime I'm also like, we have Bhakti Viksha and I'm talking to the other people about Atyahara and Prayasa, where I am not at that level, but because the instruction demand it, I have to explain them what it is and feel like I'm not practicing and I'm preaching them. Like, I have two questions on that. One is like, how much of this, what you are explaining, is coming out of demand because it's in Bhagavatam, versus from bottom of your heart, like, I feel like, like, I would like you to explain me like what are the instruction for the younger generation where, we are still have a small kids and trying to grow, and you are saying that, don't over endeavor, not have, this much facility in your around, and so how should we plan for the future, Prabhu? That's what one question is.
It's an excellent question, Prabhu. And what I was trying to make the point is, it's not that I have 12 coffee cups instead of having maybe 7 coffee cups, right? Each of us has our own capacity. I may eat maybe 10 apples and not feel satisfied. Right? There may be others who will have 1 teaspoon, or 1 bite of an apple and feel fully satisfied. Maybe too much beyond that. So it's not like we're not talking about quantities specifically, because everyone's personal situation is different. But the underlying guiding principle is something that we need to keep in mind, right? As long as we are, whatever we have, if we're using that with the right sense of, I'm using it in relationship to Krishna, Nirbandha Krishna Sambandhe, Yuktam Vairagyam, Uchate, right? So we are using it in relationship to Krishna because Krishna is also pleased and he wants to give us, he showers us with a lot of gifts. Can I be walking around saying, no, Krishna, I don't want this, I don't want that, you're giving me this, you're giving me that? No. Instead, you accept it, but in relationship back to Krishna.
Yeah. Okay.
When I had this discussion with some of my close friends who were really on the other side, she said, oh, then why do you have a Mercedes? Give it to me, I'll take it. You don't need it for Krishna. Atyahara, give it to me. The point is, no, but I am using this to, at that time we would go to Kishore Kishori regularly, right? Every Sunday, and we would take devotees with us to the temple back. It was because there were people who didn't have any conveyance. I'm not saying you need to have a Mercedes, please don't get me wrong. I'm just saying I happened to have a Mercedes at that time for whatever reason, right? My selfish reasons or otherwise. But I was able to rechannel that. Before that, I didn't. It was all about engineering. It was all about symbol. It was about, driving a better vehicle, But then when we started getting to Krishna consciousness, we understood, we should be doing things a little differently. Come on, we need to wake up at some point in time. Now, is it all the way to the other side saying, you're perfect? No, I wasn't. But at least I was starting to use something of value, at least materially, in relationship to Krishna. I was able to help other devotees, I was able to take Maharaj, pick him up from the airport and drop him off at the temple or bring him home, make it a little more comfortable, serving the devotees in one way or the other, right? Prabhupada was offered Rolls Royces and reporters asked him, what are you doing? You're saying you're so such a spiritual leader, but hey, you have a Rolls Royce. Why do you need a Rolls Royce? And Prabhupada, being Prabhupada, he said, yes. In fact, I should have a golden Rolls Royce. What are you giving me just a Rolls Royce? Why? Because by doing that in his, Prabhupada has his own point there, which is, he's serving the Lord. He's not doing it for his sense gratification by any means. There's not even a dint of sense gratification there. And also by doing so, he's giving all the others an opportunity to serve the Lord, by serving Prabhupada, right? Krishna never accepts anything from us, because we're so, at least I can speak for myself, because I'm so fallen. Krishna will accept it provided it is offered through someone who's pure, one of his pure devotees. So keeping that in mind, Atyahara is to be avoided. Now, initially during Prabhupada's movement, when he first started, when people started getting into it, believe it or not, they would literally run into people's homes, other devotees or new devotees, right? People just starting to get into the movement. Their houses would be practically ransacked. So the more established devotees would go in groups and they would take everything and dump them out, much to the horror. And to some people, it was like, oh, this is Krishna consciousness, I'm getting rid of all of this stuff. And someone hit them on their heads and said, hey, no, that is not the point. It's not that you have to throw away things and, instead use what you have in relationship to Krishna. If you can do that, using your intelligence, doing it smartly, it's just a change in consciousness. It doesn't mean you shouldn't have a big house. It doesn't mean, see, if you're able to provide for your children, for instance, and bring them up in a Krishna conscious way so that they understand how this is really helping them get closer to Krishna. So that's one guiding principle, Sanjay Prabhu, that, if it's like a yardstick, right? No matter what you're doing, if it is bringing you closer to Krishna, it's right.
Okay. Thank you.
Anything.
I feel like also that sometimes there is no option of, in this world, over endeavoring is become like a standard. Like there is no, like, you are lucky if you get a job or place where you have more time, family balance life and things like that is not easy nowadays.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
but
absolutely
just
true.
bring
Very, very rare situations, rare cases. One example that comes to me is Patraka Prabhu. Are you familiar with Patraka Prabhu? There's this devotee in ISKCON Chicago. He comes from a very affluent family. His father is a doctor. I mean, everything is made for him. But you see him, he could have also gone a similar direction, but instead he completely took off from all of that. He said, no, I'm going to have a farm. I'm going to lead a very simple life. I'm going to bring up my children on that farm, teach us to be self-sufficient, self-reliant, and serve Krishna. And he faced huge challenges along the way, even from the temple management, leave alone the outside world. But he was able to sustain. He was very, very clear that that's what he wanted to do, stayed with it. Now, when I look back, it's taken him about 10 years, but hey, I was at his farm just earlier, a couple of months ago, and I see how beautifully he's set it up. If you get a chance, please go. But you'll see how well he's taking care of the children, how well he's taking care of the cows, how well he's taking care of, the plants that he's growing, the vegetables that he's growing. It's just wonderful to see that aspect of his life. That's burgeoned, and not without Krishna's help, right? Krishna has stepped in and helped him, and his eagerness is what Krishna was pleased with, and you can see that. And with that, he's able to do what he's doing today, and he will continue to sustain. Those children are growing up beautifully there.
Nice. Thank you.
Hare Krishna. Good question, bro. Any other questions? All right. Jayant Prabhu, you seem to be rather quiet today. Okay. I don't mean to put you on the spot, but if there's nothing else, Lingaraj Prabhu.
No, Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank you. Yeah, I've been listening. Thanks for the wonderful lecture, and especially with your running nose. So it's been a pleasure to hear you.
Hopefully, that's one good thing. We're far away that I'm not going to be giving you my cold. But that's maybe one benefit of having modern technology. We can still do this and not actually, physically be in contact and proximity to extend my cold to you. So thank you. So anything from your side, anything that you want to, any questions, comments?
No problem. Thank you very much. It was a very clear discussion. Thank you very much.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhupada, Pranama, Guru Srila Prabhupada. Thank you very much. As usual, it's such a nice personal examples and practical examples and so on and so forth. I feel that even though we have taken that 4 regulatory principles, I realize that I'm not following any of them. So the way you narrated, it's not like a scary part of it, but how serious are we and supposed to be followed? I'm just thinking, I'm trying and praying that at least I'll imbibe those going forward. So it's such a nice narration of every principle. It was deep in the heart. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you, Prabhu. It's more a lesson for myself because we get caught up so easily, right? And I'm definitely one of them who gets so carried away so easily, especially with long days like all of us. At the end of the day, the mind is like, please leave me alone. Let me do what I want to do, right? Whether it's watching a cricket match or whether it's indulging in something even worse, right? Doing something that I should be doing. So the mind is always pulling us in those directions, and we just need to be on the watch out. We may or may not be able to withstand that initially or maybe for a period of time, but in time, Krishna will see that our eagerness is kicking in and he will help us. That faith we need to have. So we will fall multiple times. Like Prabhupada says, a baby doesn't start walking straight away. Baby stands up, falls down, stands up, falls down, stands up, falls down. But eventually the baby starts to walk and starts to run. We are not there. That's okay, but that shouldn't discourage us. We should.
Yeah, but basically the slip, we can always slip. But what after slip is the question.
Correct. How do you bounce back? Exactly.
Yeah.
Not just fall and say, oh, I've fallen and that's it. I can't get up.
I don't think anybody would have said I haven't slipped in my life. I guarantee that everybody has that experience. But how do we bounce back? It's only by the mercy of the devotees.
Perfect.
And that's how we have to keep going. And that doesn't mean that listening to your lecture is discouraging. I don't know whether I can follow this. Not really that. Basically, yes, everybody has that. And then how we get back is the principle. Because even chanting, it takes 40 hours. Prabhupada, many times we heard that it takes even perfect chanting take 40 years. So what do you think? Following every in a day, mind is very wavering. Can't do anything much. But at least we should be aware that this is what it is and tolerate. That's what I understand.
Very good. Thank you so much, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Very nice class, Prabhu. I was able to hear on and off because of my other services. I like the point where the whole class is centered around the purity is the force, and especially when you were saying about the very famous Haridas Thakur Passion, where the prostitute getting transformed in 3 days, and Maharaj is talking about the purity is the force. It's quite vivid. And even in our lives also, like the strength of the purity is varying, but the overall principle is that is the force which is carrying us, and especially in association with the pure devotees, that is very helpful. Thank you, Prabhu. That's which I want to share.
Thank you, Sachkumar Prabhu. Hare Krishna. So I'm not going to hold you up anymore. Thank you again for being a part of this and bearing with me. So if I said anything incorrect or inaccurate, please forgive me. I'm still learning. This is a journey for me. And I'm wishing all of you, a very happy weekend, as well as, the weeks to come, to continue. Prepare yourself for the winter. Brave yourself. It's not all that bad. I'm just kidding. But continue in your Krishna consciousness. Thank you so much. And let's stay together. Hare Krishna. Thank you, Lingaraj Prabhu.
Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.